All right, so we've kind of got our attendee list. Obviously, it'll keep growing as the minutes kind of go on here, but let's go ahead and hop right in. For those of you, I'm sure you've seen my face before with Hudu if you've attended any of these webinars. I'm Daniel, I'm an account manager for Hudu, but this webinar is going to be mostly focused on our special guest here, Brandon. So, Brandon, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, for sure. My name is Brandon Martinez. I'm one of the founding partners over at ZenTop Consulting. We are a consultancy helping MSPs implement automation practices that we've learned over the years by running our own MSP for quite a while. So we provide both services to get custom workflows built out in different platforms, but then we also have a fully managed automation platform for you, where we take the workload off you entirely for planning, imports, monitoring the workflows. If you want it, we got it.
Awesome. Yeah. And thanks so much for joining us on this webinar today, Brandon. So we kind of consider the reason we wanted to bring Brandon on today is we kind of consider Brandon to be a power user of Hudu. He's done a very large amount of awesome automations with Hudu and has been using Hudu along with other products in the space for quite a while. And so we thought he would be the perfect guest to bring on today for this meeting. Brendan, can you talk a little bit about what the people attending today are hopefully going to learn from this webinar and kind of what you provide as a power user of Hudu?
Yeah, for sure. Biggest takeaway is going to be just some ideas of how to automate your documentation. We are using Rewst. You don't have to use Rewst. One of the first things we go over is how to get access to the Hudu API. It's an open REST API. So any sort of automation tool you have, whether it be scripts you write for Azure Function Apps, Rewst, N8N, other RPA platforms, you can probably integrate in with it. At our MSP, we really try to make as much source of truth lie within the documentation platform as we can. But part of that is our team has to actually trust the documents are going to be up to date and accurate. And the best way to make sure that's correct is by running through these automations. You're not going to have the time to dedicate a resource to checking multiple times a day to see if things are changing and then updating in docs, but you can easily make a robot do that.
Yeah, and that's really the whole goal of automation, right? And probably how you've seen so many benefits within your company just by automating your documentation is it saves you time and you don't have to go in and kind of manually add in everything in. And that again is really the goal of this webinar. And we kind of want to provide a little bit of Brandon's insights into the rest of our community here. So, before we jump in, little disclaimer, if you've joined our webinars before, we have the chat already open, and I love to see people engaging in the chat already. We also have our Q&A section. So, if we can prioritize Q&A questions for Brandon today, that just helps us sort through them and a little bit easier. You can obviously continue to engage in the chat and talk amongst each other but if for any kind of questions that you have for Brandon or for along any lines throughout this webinar, feel free to put them in the Q&A for us today. We'll be monitoring that all throughout the webinar. Um, all right, so Brandon, we can kind of get kicked off here. I know that um, I know that we probably have users kind of joining into this webinar that are all across the spectrum from never used an API in their life all the way to use the API everything they do in their day to day. So I really wanted to get this started with just going over a little bit about what is an API, what's Hudu's API look like, where can you find it, and how can you use it?
Yeah, for sure. So an API is application programmer interface. Essentially, it's a method to send information programmatically to a platform, not necessarily using a front end that you would normally access, put information in. So it really opens up a lot of possibilities for integrating with different tools, different platforms, things that you wouldn't normally think can talk to each other, especially when you're using an RPA tool that's able to orchestrate that like Rewst. Let me go ahead and share my screen out and I'll show everyone how to get to the API settings in the Hudu platform here.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
All right, should be sharing now. So this is going to be in the admin page of the Hudu instance we have for our lab. And right down at the very bottom under account administration, we have API keys. We can click on that. You can make individual API keys. I do recommend that you make API keys for each individual tool you have, just makes it a lot easier in case one of those keys needs to be rotated or deleted to clear that out, having to go through. Another thing you'll notice on here is that we are scoping allowed IPs. So Rewst has a well-known public IP address. We say we only want this API key to work going to this Rewst public IP address. So even if there is any sort of leakage of this API key somehow, unless it's coming from the Rewst system, you're still have an extra layer there of security. That being said, if you do suspect an API key has leaked on any platform, not just Hudu, first thing you need to do is go ahead and revoke it and generate a new one. So authentication is through here, but how do you actually learn how to use it? API documentation. This link right here goes out to the API docs. That is a quick change from dark mode to light mode, apologies, to the class for the flashbang. But this is where you're going to find the documentation for the Hudu API. This is a open API spec, so there's actually a JSON file you can open up here, and it looks weird in the browser, but you can import this into any tool that can take in open API Swagger docs to fully automate the actual import of these. But you can see we have everything we possibly need or could want to use to modify, pull, and add data into the Hudu platform. We can add articles. Quick breakdown of the different requests you have. Get's going to be give me something. Delete's going to be delete something. Post is generally going to be this doesn't exist and I want it to exist. And then put's going to be if it already exists, go ahead and just update it. Put a change in something that's already there. So most of them are going to fall within those 4 categories. So we can say, asset layouts, get asset layout. You can drop this down. It gives you the parameters that you need to give in to filter this information, but then also a sample response. So without even having to send an API request, by using these API documents, you're able to get rich information as far as how to plan out your integration with the platform as a whole. And this should cover almost, I believe, everything that you can do in Rewst, including Magic Dash, which is a pretty cool feature of it, where you can upload snippets of code to make interactive dashboards within certain asset layouts as well.
Yeah, that's great. We've definitely kind of prided ourselves on over the years to really the end goal is anything that you can do with the UI of Hudu, we want you to be able to utilize the API to do similar functionality. And so that's definitely a big goal of ours and for users like yourself and hopefully for everybody that is joining and wants to learn a little bit more about what's possible with the API. We're going to continue to make sure that those things are accessible for you. Um, so yes, I know you have mentioned Rewst a couple of the times through this webinar. Now, Rewst is obviously a very powerful automation tool that you can connect with Hudu and integrate, but I know there's a lot of people out there that are curious about both other tools as well as just using the API, maybe with again, kind of any other tool out there. So can you talk a little bit about that, kind of why you chose Rewst and other capabilities as well?
Yeah, for sure. One of the biggest benefits that we use to pick Rewst as our RPA platform is the ability for it to really easily create multi-tenant workflows and integrations. So rather than having to go through and create an API key for each of our customers, if they have different platforms, we're able to have Rewst go through and actually extend that out from the top level down. In the context of Hudu, you're going to have a single API key for your organization as an MSP, but then you're able to, in the platform, map out specific organizations below that. So your company's so when you run a workflow under the context of company A, it knows, okay, this is the ID of the company in Hudu, so I'm going to go ahead and run my queries against that. This is not something that's necessarily unique to Rewst. It's just a part of the piece of the puzzles that they've already made for you. Other platforms are able to do this as well. If you want to use any other platform, they have on their API documentations a good example here of what a command would look like. You go ahead and hit your Hudu domain /API/v1, and then the endpoint that you want to access. In the example, it'll be companies. From there, you can add on query parameters. So it's a page native resource. So we're just going to do the first page and then add the header X API key to actually authenticate the call against the resource. This curl command is agnostic enough. You can put that into anything, whether that be another RPA tool similar to Rewst or just your own PowerShell scripts. We'll come back to it a little bit later, but in the community library for Hudu, there's a large amount of scripts based out in PowerShell people have done. And I believe some people in the community have also made PowerShell modules that integrate directly to make it even easier to run these commands against the API.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So basically, the one of the first things you mentioned in this webinar, which is really again the focus, is why it's important to make Hudu your central source of truth for all things documentation, and how you use automation to make that a real possibility. And so I know today you've brought some awesome examples of how you've done this through your own company. And so I think that's probably what our attendees mostly would love to see today is just kind of how you're leveraging automation to do cool things in Hudu and really make your documentation as automated as possible. So I know you brought some examples. If you want to start jumping into those, I think we'd all love to see that today.
Yeah, for sure. One of the biggest challenges we have on the service management side is just there's so many different places information can live. You could have to check Microsoft for some things, you have to check your third-party tools for others. Maybe it's a ticket, maybe it's a calendar invite. So we need one place where our team can just go to get information regardless of what it is. And Hudu is kind of the answer to that. So the first example I'm going to show off today is a documentation flow for GDAP agreements. GDAP is sometimes it's clear as mud as far as what it's doing. And sometimes we want to make sure that we are having the correct roles assigned, but then also keeping track of things as an expiration, which will segue into the next one I'll show off in a little bit. So let me go ahead and share out my screen again, and we can run through the first one that we have. Awesome. So if anyone's unfamiliar with Rewst, this is what Rewst looks like. It is a canvas. Again, this is the tool that we are using. This is not necessarily the tool you have to use to integrate with the Rewst API. But we're going to start off with a just begin action to notate, hey, we're starting this. From there, we're going to go ahead and build a list of tenants from Rewst. So the concept here is a sub workflow. You're able to have different modular workflows called by other workflows in a child-parent type of relationship. So we're going to go ahead and jump into this build tenant list sub workflow here. Pretty simple. We're going to say, okay, list all the organizations we have in Rewst, get their tenant IDs on Microsoft, and then go ahead and just send it back to the top level workflow. From there, we're going to go ahead and take that list. We're going to publish this as mapping list. And then for each tenant in that list, we're going to give it two pieces of information. We're going to give it the Microsoft tenant ID and then the Rewst org ID. And then we're going to loop through for every single one of our customers from there. This is where the meat of the workflow happens. So we're going to first, at our MSP level, go ahead and get all of our GDAP customers. This is an API endpoint for Microsoft Graph, which is Microsoft's API for most things. So we're going to ask it, hey, under our tenant relationships and then delegated admin customers, who do we have? Just run a get on that. From there, we're going to say, okay, let's do a sanity check to make sure that there actually is a tenant ID in here. So we're going to get the result out of there, which is going to be an array of values, map out the attribute tenant ID, and then just make sure that the tenant ID we're asking for is part of that list. If it is, we'll continue. If not, we'll go ahead and fail the workflow. Once we've confirmed that, yes, we have an active relationship with this customer, we can then go ahead and get their relationship information. So this is going to be a very similar endpoint, tenant relationships, delegated admin relationships. And then we're going to get information out of here to filter that down into a specific agreement. So if the customer name matches the customer tenant ID in the response, go ahead and pull out all of the agreements in a list that apply to them for GDAP permissions. Then we're going to go down to add an asset. We're going to add the name of it being the name of the GDAP agreement, the role being the array of roles that are assigned to it, status, active or terminated, when it was created, and then when does it expire. We're also going to run this under the Rewst org ID that we passed in, so it has the context of who this workflow is mapped to. We'll drill down to the sub workflow once more. And this is going to contain the logic to actually create the asset in Hudu. So first up, we're going to check to say, does it already exist? If we don't have the step, then it's going to just make infinite GDAP relationships in Hudu. So we're going to say, do we have anything that matches the name? If it already exists, just say, hey, skip, asset exists, go to the end. If not, though, we can go ahead and run this call to add an asset. So what's the layout? It's going to be a GDAP agreement. What's the name? Name of the GDAP agreement itself. These layout field IDs are going to then correspond to different fields in the actual asset type. So we have the status, the value of when it was created, the value of when it expires, and then we're making a rich text formatted HTML field for the role name and the description, and then the ID if available. Then we go out to the end. So pretty straightforward after that. We go ahead and close these. Back up to the top level. Once we're done, go out to end, we end the workflow. In practice, it looks like this. So we have the name of the agreement, the status of it being active, when it expires, and the roles that are assigned to it. This is really important here. So Hudu is able to put expiration information on any asset as long as you add the custom field type to the asset for expiration. A lot of people have that, but they don't actually audit where it goes. So feeding into the next workflow we have to show off, we're going to go ahead and actually do something of that information. This is the expiration alert monitor. So what we're able to do in Hudu, let me go ahead and pull up my lab tenant again here, and I will show you what that looks like. We can actually create webhooks to receive information when something happens. So let's go to the account administration page and find where that is here.
Brandon, I think your screen is still on this Rewst workflow as well.
Oh,
If you're trying to show off something else.
yeah, gotcha. Let me go ahead and pull up the docs. So I'm jumping a little bit ahead here, but we do have a link to the setup here, and I have to reference my own docs sometimes. Check out the documentation here. Cool. So this is going to be in the admin page and then alerts. There we go, alerts. We're going to go ahead and make a new alert here. We're going to say expiration list. We'll say something expired. We'll trigger 30 days. Not password, expiration list. And then we have this optional drop down here for configure webhook. And this is where we're going to actually send it in. So in the documentation that we get alongside this in the post, we have a example here of the count and expirations. So we're going to put this payload into the webhook here. To actually get our webhook endpoint back over here, we can make a new trigger in Rewst for inbound webhook. Turn that on, make this a webhook trigger. Save that. And then we have this webhook URL. We can paste the URL here. We'll go back to our docs, copy out this JSON, drop that in here, and save this alert. So this is going to go ahead and do a few things. Whenever something happens in Hudu to go ahead and send an alert for expiration, it's going to then not tell an email address. It's going to tell Rewst on this workflow, hey, something is expiring. You need to do something with it. And then it'll take the following actions. So first up, we're going to go ahead and start by beginning. We're going to initialize a log collector here to make sure we have information as far as what's working and what's not. And then we're going to go ahead and list the expirations out. So we know that something is expired, and I want to get a little bit more verbose information about that. So once we list the expiration, we're going to go ahead and put that in the filter here. And we have this line of code. It looks a little bit scary. If you're not familiar with Rewst, still the templating language they use is Jinja. It's based off of Python, so if you use Python, it's fairly familiar, but this is just a method for us to filter out information. So we're going to assume that CTX, which is the context variable for the expirations we got out of this action here, we're going to take each item in that array, and we're going to say, okay, so what is our expiration threshold? In this case, it's 30 days. So we're going to say, give me everything that is expiring within the next 30 days. Go ahead and append it to this workflow here, or this variable here, and then spit that back out. So by the end of this, we now have a list of everything that is going to expire within our threshold that we set in the workflow. And then we go down to the sub workflow. We've collected information. Now we can actually do something with it. We'll pop this out here. We got a few options. So first up, is it a website or is it a normal asset? That's the big difference between things. There's a little bit difference on the API response. So if it's a website, then we can say, cool, okay, let's get all of the information we can possibly get out of it. We're going to pass the asset ID to get that out. From there, we're going to say, okay, list all the tickets we have with the summary, upcoming expiration for asset name. If this ticket exists, we're going to go straight to the end. Reason being is we don't want to just start flooding the service desk with tickets about things expiring for every single one of the 30 days leading up to the expiration. So we want to make sure that, hey, there's actually not an alert here already for that. If not, then we'll go ahead and go on to create the ticket. So summary is going to be upcoming expiration for asset name. We set it on the board. We set the board type, subtype, and item. So it goes in all the way triage to whatever team needs to see it for a expiration. Company ID is going to pass in from the top level workflow. So it's automatically made under the correct company in our tenant. And then under the initial description, we have some information that we pulled out of Hudu. So an asset of the type, here's the type, website. If it's a custom asset, a list of flexible asset name. Here's the name of it. When is it expiring? View the details here. One nice thing about the Hudu API is it often responds with URL slugs. So you can make dynamic links directly back to the relevant document that you need. Very similar path if it's not a website. We're going to go ahead and just get the general asset type, so the asset ID and the company, and then we're going to go through that same check to make it out. So in practice, what does this look like? I'm going to switch from dark mode to light mode again, so shield your eyes for just a moment. Moving back into manage, we can see we have a service ticket on our eTop help lab, and here we go. So an asset of the type computer, titled, here's the name of the computer, set to expire on September 9th, 2025, and then view the details here. We can click into this and it'll go straight to the Hudu asset that is expiring. So our team can look at it. This works for computers, it works for GDAP if you have the previous workflow enabled, it works for websites. A lot of the time it's more of an informational type thing, but for example, if a GDAP agreement is expiring, you can get a heads up on that. You don't have to worry about going back and auto-renewing it or going back into the customer side and saying, hey, I need you to accept this link again because we expired. You're able to go through and take care of that proactively for the customer. So a lot of technical information here. I do have some more, but I do also want to pause to see if there are any open questions. I don't see anything in the Q&A or chat at the moment.
Yeah, nothing in there at the moment, but I think something, I think would be a common question that some people would have here is, so obviously you're, as you've shown, a pretty big expert in this category of kind of using different automations to leverage various things inside of documentation, your PSA, all sorts of things. So I think that let's say we take a brand new person to this space, a new Hudu user, a new MSP owner or whatever that may be.
Mhm.
What advice would you give them to get started with all of this?
Yeah, so biggest information or biggest advice I can give early on is make sure your Hudu instance is set up properly from the start. It comes out of the box pretty well set up, but then you start getting into those different custom asset types. And then you want to make sure that those are perfect. It's always a lot easier to spend the time ahead of time to make sure your inputs are going to be accurate versus having to go back and fix them retroactively. So spend some time sitting down defining, first up, what kind of assets do I have? What kind of assets do I need to document? And then out of that, how granular do I want to be? Do I want to make one asset that contains all the different things for a whole category? Do I want to categorize it down into each individual, type has its own entry into it? And these are questions that are more for the MSP side. There's not really a one size fits all answer to what kind of documentation you need to have. It'll come down to your tool stack, the way your existing policies are, if you have any existing policies for documentation standards, which leads you into the next step of making a standard for documentation. Hudu has a great feature on the platform where you can actually get rankings for documentation, just kind of comparing it against similar docs and figuring out kind of what your gold star baseline looks like. Make sure that for all the things that you can't automatically document, your team knows what the expectations are for information to be put in. You can kind of control this with required fields on the asset types, but having a gold standard document of here's what good looks like is super helpful to make sure everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, that's great. And I think it's funny you were talking about that. And in my role, I'm talking to current customers and all the time, every day. And I get that question all the time from a non-automation standpoint as well of, how do I start? And that's typically the answer that I'll give as well is really making sure that you know those asset layouts that you need and want to build out inside of Hudu. That's typically the number one thing. So we do have a question here. Are we going to see some tools that don't use Rewst? And I believe you do have one more kind of workflow that you were going to show off. Is that correct?
Yeah, I do have one more. It is still run by Rewst under the hood, but there are some other platforms outside of Hudu that it calls on to get things moving. Again, everything that I'm showing off here is possible outside of Rewst, just with different API endpoints that you can get out of the platform. So whether it be N8N or PowerShell scripts, you are able to essentially replicate this wherever you need to. So let me go ahead and pop open the tab for our other tenant here. This is going to run fully in our lab. One of the problems that we had at our MSP, and now Zentop as a consultancy firm, is keeping track of where people are traveling in the world. It is unfortunately happened once or twice where we have double booked tickets for people who are flying somewhere or going to a hotel, just because, not because anyone made a mistake or messed up, but because we didn't have good documentation of what had already happened. especially as you start to grow your company and you have multiple different people who can run these sorts of bookings and engagements, it gets hard to track. So this is something that's not necessarily technical, but what we track in Hudu, event attendance. So we have a method of getting this put into the platform via Microsoft Teams. One of the things we deliver to our customers on the top side is a pre-built Teams bot that you can converse with. And one of the features it has is creating event attendance records. So let me start off by showing the Hudu side of things first. Let me share my screen back out. And this is what the event attendance asset looks like. Nothing in there right now. We'll go to new, and here are the fields we have. So what is the name of the event? When does it start? When does it end? Who's going? Where is it? What is the internal admin ticket number? We track everything under a ticket so we can know who's spending time doing what and use it to track time while we're out at the convention. We have some tick boxes for the event tickets purchased if they are information about those event tickets, any confirmation codes they may have. Same for flight, who's responsible for booking the flight? Have they booked it? What's the flight's information? Who's booking the hotel? Is it booked? What's the hotel's information? Basically everything you need to, at a glance, get information about a booking for an event coming up. When we get something coming, let me go ahead and pull out the workflow here. This is our Teams bot interface. So we can say, hi, I need to put or document information about an event coming up in a few months. Can you help me get started on the event booking process? We'll give it a minute to spin up and check. This is still somewhat in development on the classification side of things. So if we don't get a response or it seems a little off, then bear with me and we'll do some live debugging. But awesome, cool. So here is a form it gave us. Please provide following information. It is also able to pull in context out of the message. So if you say I'm booking an event called IT Nation Connect in Orlando, Florida, it'll pre-fill some of these fields for you. Because I didn't give it that information, it just gave me the whole form. Some of these fields are required, some of them aren't. So what's the base level of information that we need for this? We need to know what it's called. And I'll go with the example of IT Nation Connect. When is it happening? We should know this when we're booking it. That's going to be happening, I believe, the week of the 3rd to the 7th of November. Where is it? This one's in Orlando. Who's going? I am going. And my business partner, BJ, is going as well. We haven't purchased the event tickets yet. Let's say our CFO, Sarah, is responsible for booking the flights and the hotel. We haven't done any of that yet. We just know that we're going. Let's submit here. This is going to get sent back to Rewst and the Azure bot framework. Give it a second to run through. It's going to create an asset in Hudu, and then it should update once it's done this card saying, hey, new event's been created. Here's when it starts. Here's where it ends. Who's going? Our tickets purchased, and who's responsible for flights. Going back to Hudu here, we can refresh the page. And there's our event right here. Now let's say we need to update something. Let's say I need to update the event we have coming up called IT Nation Connect. We booked the hotel and the info is confirmation code ABC 123. This is going to go back to the bot and say, okay, now I need to search for events called IT Nation Connect in the context of this company, and let's go ahead and process an update for it. Give this a second to run through, and it should come back up with a similar form. Cool. While that's running and updating that, we'll keep things rolling here with information about how this works at the high level. So when you're working with a bot framework, this is not necessarily something that's unique to Rewst. Again, this is something that's using the Azure OpenAI bot framework. This is going to be a $0 resource you can provision in any Azure tenant you have, and it gives you what's called a messaging endpoint. This is a resource you can add to your teams either as an application or as a just a link you click to chat, and then it sends information out to Azure. Azure then sends it out to your messaging endpoint. This messaging endpoint is just a webhook in Rewst, just like the alert expiration monitor for Hudu. So it's going to get this information and then it's going to parse through it and say, what do we need to do here? One of the challenges we had is with adoption specifically, people were having to either remember what sort of specific commands are being sent through to invoke a specific action, or they would have just a massive scroll list of different things you can pre-fill to put in. I wanted to make it in a way where you could just talk to it like a person, like it was your own personal assistant to do different things in the platform. So what we do is we check to see what's happening. Are we sending howdy, which is kind of our debug command to get information about the registration. If we're reinstalling or have a new installation, we need to cache information about it. If a new Teams member gets added, if we have a specific response, or if we just get a message and nothing else matches. We're going to say, okay, if you get a message, here's all the things that you can do. You can do project reports. You can summarize tickets. You can do a password reset. You can schedule help. But all the way down here, event management, event, Hudu event. These are just proximal terms that it knows that if it sees, it's probably going to be related to that and up its confidence score for what we're asking for. This gets fed into a OpenAI endpoint where the system message is you're an assistant that's designed to intake messages and summarize it into one of these categories, and then some further information about how it should format the response. Out of that, we're going to get the category. So message choice, just the first content on there. And then we'll go down into this action selector. What is it asking for? Project report. Does category equal project report? Does category equal schedule helper? All the way down until we identify, okay, this is for event management. We'll open this up. Cool. Now this is the big boy workflow that does all the things. And I see a question about how to get forms into Teams, and that is part of this one. So we're going to start off to see what kind of input is this. This is also able to be invoked via a form. So to give you an example, what that looks like, it's very similar to what you see in the Teams interface just through the Rewst form UI. So we're going to decide, because the input is going to be a little bit different, is it a form or is it a bot request? If it's a bot, we're going to say, okay, get all the asset layouts, find the ID for event attendance, and then get all the assets within there. And then we're going to say, okay, is this a written message from a user, which is me, asking I need to update the event, I need to document information about the event, or is it a response? When you have a response out of adaptive card, it comes through as it's a message, but it has an extra condition on there, attribute saying, hey, this is a content. So it has actual JSON representation of the form submission versus just message and then text. So if it's just a message, which it usually is going to start as, we're going to say, okay, determine what they want to do. You are an assistant designed to intake a request, determine if it falls into categories create, update, or query. Respond only if one of those three words. If we say create, then it's going to say, cool, okay, next step, you're going to receive a request to create an event with the following information, format it like this JSON. Event name, start date, end date, location, attendees, so on and so forth. If a key cannot be identified, return the value unknown to that key. Respond only with JSON and nothing else. Open API, ChatGPT likes to format the responses in Markdown, which tends to break things when you're trying to get it in programmatically. So we have to make sure we say no Markdown, just JSON. Next up, we'll validate that data. Again, sometimes AIs don't respond to what you want. So before we send a broken response back to the user, we want to make sure, is everything actually there? If it is, then we're going to respond that back, and then we'll create an asset based off it. So here's all the information we pulled out of the message to create that asset. We'll go ahead and create a ticket as well for the internal admin board ticket, and then we'll set this adaptive card. This adaptive card is going to be what we use to give that form information. So right now it's a table, but we're going to go ahead and say for field in CTX event fields, we're going to go ahead and add a new table row. Within there, we're going to have two cells for the name of the field, the value. It's going to programmatically fill out the rest of this card with that information. If we're updating it, we can do the same sort of thing where it says, hey, you will receive a request to change event information, and you're supposed to find a event name, a specific field of that value. So we have event name, location, and then value. From there, it's going to say match it to one of the events we pulled out of the list assets, match it to a specific field within the fields on that asset. If you can't find it, say unknown, otherwise return the JSON response. From there, we do another validation on the data, and then we update the asset. Lastly, query, we can also ask it, hey, what's up with this? Where are we at on the booking? And we'll get the same structured table that we see out of here. So same sort of information, match it to one of the events, match it to the field. Just don't necessarily need anything about updating it. From there, we'll go ahead, validate the data, make sure the specific field they're asking for is present, and then send the adaptive card back. One other thing to find on here is where we're actually formatting the form itself, and that should be on the create action. Let's see, so we have, adaptive card. So this is gonna say if we're missing information, which we were here, we didn't have everything, go ahead and generate an adaptive card to respond back to the user with. This adaptive card is going to be in JSON format. And here's where it figures out, do I have the information or do I don't have the information? If the event name is equal to unknown, go ahead and ask for the event name. Otherwise, go ahead and pre-fill the value with what we have put in under validate data event name. If the start date's unknown, ask for the start date. Otherwise, go ahead and just pre-fill that information, so on and so forth. You're able to build an adaptive card with any number of items on there. So we have this one for input text. For the date, we have input date, start date, and it allows you to dynamically fill those fields in based on information from the query. From there, either updates the card. So if we've processed an update successfully and we're responding to it, we have a message ID so we can go back and update it. That's how the card actually changed itself dynamically once the form was entered. It knew its own ID, and then you can see here that it shows it edited the card to update itself. Otherwise, if we need to send a new card, we'll use the send teams bot adaptive card sub workflow to send a net new card out to the user. So this is another method, just kind of outside of the expectations of what documentation should be for technology, where we're actually using it to extend even further into our operational goals as well. Some other examples of some things we've done along those lines is documenting licensing for customers, NCE subscriptions. When do those come in? When do they expire? That sort of stuff with the automation side of the Rewst platform. Just checking the chat here and the Q&A if anyone had any other questions for us. Can Hudu assist with automatically creating KVs from complete tickets with Halo PSA and ConnectWise? Yes, it can. And we are actually working on something very similar, except instead of putting it in Hudu, we're putting it into an Azure A semantic search engine so we can actually get information out of our tickets here. Let me show you how that works for ConnectWise, and then that might give you some information on how you can feed that into Hudu as well. This is going to be the indexer for the ticket. Let's filter down to the tag Azure AI search. Folders when. Here we go. Summarize and index ticket. Cool. So whenever we have a ticket on our ConnectWise board, go into a status that indicates it's closed. And there's a difference on our MSP service desk between closed and resolved. Resolve means we have fixed the issue, but we still want to leave that ticket open for about 3 days. Sometimes it recurs. We think we got it, but we didn't get it all the way, or there's a follow-up issue. So when it's in that status, it's air quotes closed. After 3 days, we consider the matter closed enough and enough time has passed that if it recurs again, they're gonna have to make a new ticket for it. So we're looking for tickets that are specifically in that second status where we know we're done with it. We're not gonna make any more changes. From there, we're gonna say, okay, get information on that ticket. We're wanting to pull out the summary, the board it's on, who is assigned to work on it, that sort of metadata. And then we're gonna get ticket notes. So get all the notes on service, ticket, ticket ID, all notes. And then we're also gonna specifically get the fields that are text-based. If it has notes, true if ticket notes exist, we're gonna go ahead and put them in the specific order they have. So we're gonna do some crazy regex replacement here to strip out any sort of links, URL queries on there, or things that could break the Jinja filter engine. So curly brackets, percent signs, pipes on there. We're gonna go ahead and order them in reverse because that's how the API responds with it. And then we're gonna feed that into OpenAI. And we're gonna say, hey, you're an assistant that's designed to intake ticket notes and write a well-structured paragraph summary describing the ticket, including the resolution, as well as if the resolution is separated out as well. Indicate the main issue, what system was affected, steps that were taken in troubleshooting, root cause, and then the final resolution or outcome. It should be in this format: summary, the summary including the resolution, and then resolution a little bit more verbose of the resolution process itself. From there, it parses through it. It makes sure that, hey, this is all present there. We don't have a failure. It's in the correct format to get ingested into the engine. We go ahead and generate a vector embedding, which is a whole can of worms. If you're not familiar with how AI vector search works, I recommend you look into it. But if I were to go through it, we'd be here for another 4 hours. Essentially, you're finding information not based on keyword, but rather proximity to other specific information in the platform. It gets you a several thousand long list of float variables that you can push through. So once we have the embedding information on there, we'll post it out to the search engine and we're done. So really the only difference is where this post index goes. Right now it goes to Azure AI Search. You could totally put that on Hudu to start indexing a list of resolution for your tickets if you want to do that. You could also have it go back into the note. One of our other workflows we have on the ConnectWise side is whenever a ticket goes into close, it'll take that same summary, it'll mark it as a resolution note. So if we have to go back to the ticket record itself, that's already documented and ready to go up front for anyone who needs to go backwards and search for it. Any other questions in the chat, either related to that or unrelated?
Yeah, that was great, Brandon. Thanks for showing off those workflows. And oh, we got one more in here if you want to take this one.
Yeah, for sure. This is a good segue into the next topic we have before the Q&A, either from y'all or the fine folks over at Hudu on the call. There is a community library for scripts in Hudu, and that's what I was referencing earlier. If we go to the Hudu community and go to automation library, we have some exports. So we have our GDAP documentation helper and our expirations tracker. These are community workflows. Zentop typically does charge for their workflows. We have people on recurring plans that give us access to our premium crate library, but we also see the value in growing the community, the whole rising tides, raise all ships kind of mentality. So we don't have the AI related ones up here, but we do have the first two I showed off. So the expiration tracker for ConnectWise PSA and the GDAP documentation helper. All of these have this bundle JSON export.
Yeah, and that's a great segue. So yeah, thank you again, Brandon. We were fortunate enough to have Brandon upload some of those Rewst workflows that he showed off earlier in the automation library. If you're in this call today and you haven't taken a look at the automation library at all, I know we had a couple questions about outside of Rewst and doing things like that. We do have many different PowerShell, as well as N8N is something else that we've been exploring quite frequently lately. And so there are quite a lot of scripts in this, and they come from both internally as well as our community members like Brandon and others. And so definitely highly recommend to take a look through our automation library. If you have any scripts that you're running and you want to add them here, we always appreciate those as well. But there's definitely a lot of different things in here that you can take advantage of and leverage to, like Brennan said, provide some automation into Hudu and kind of stop those manual workflows. Um, Also, in addition to what's in here, we did just add Brandon as an official partner of Hudu. So if you go to our community and click Find Consultants there, Zentop Consulting is that option there in the consultants page. So I know that most of you joining today probably know that we are doing a free giveaway today, but if you don't win that free time with Brandon today, you can always take advantage of what he has to offer as well. And you can find that information on our community site or on our website under partners. Um, I think now, I guess, is probably a good time to do that giveaway with about 15 minutes left. So we can go ahead and do that. And then we'll stay on and answer any questions because I do know we have a couple more here as well. So when we started this webinar talks with Brandon, we basically offered an hour paid by Hudu, and Brandon was gracious enough to match that and offer an hour off of his own time as well, which is why we have the 2 free hours of Brandon's time as the giveaway today. So we have randomly selected a winner from the attendees list. So drum roll, please. I guess it's just you and I, Brandon, that people can hear. But the winner of the giveaway today is Cliff Gailher. Hopefully, I'm saying that right. But Cliff, you did win the giveaway today, so we will go ahead and shoot you over a follow-up email from the Hoodoo side with Brandon CC'd on that after the webinar ends today. And yeah, hopefully that's very helpful. And again, if you didn't win, I know that only one person can win, and we had quite a lot of attendees today. But if you do want to take advantage of what Brandon has to offer, always feel free to book some time with him as well. Cliff, again, will send you over an email shortly. Congrats on winning today's giveaway. Um, yeah, I guess we can stay on. Oh, Well, Cliff said,
We have a reroll.
yeah, re-roll. Luckily, we did actually, and Cliff, that's awesome for you to say that. Um, Cliff basically said he sent a message to us and said that he's happy to donate that to another person because he really wouldn't be able to take advantage of that right now. So luckily, we did prepare for this, and Cliff, that's very nice of you to kind of know where you're at and be able to give that to another person. So definitely appreciate that. And obviously, if down the line, if you ever have questions or want to reach out to our team about that, then definitely let us know because we appreciate your honesty there. So again, luckily we did prepare for this. We randomized two people's names just in case the original winner had dropped off. Or in this case, I guess that wasn't something that I was technically expecting, but that's perfect. So drum roll, please, again, Brandon. The actual winner of the giveaway is going to be Craig Plath. Hopefully, I'm saying that right again as well. But Craig, congratulations. If you also want to pass it on to the next person, let us know and we'll pick somebody else. But Craig, as of now, you are the winner of the 2 free hours of Brandon's time, and we will send you over an email. Okay, woohoo! Sounds like he's taken the offer. So Craig, we'll send you over a follow-up email afterwards with some information. But congratulations. Um, Alrighty, so we still have about 10 minutes here, so we're going to go into a couple more things. Uh, One thing that I really wanted to ask, because we get a ton of questions about it and we didn't really touch on it directly, but I know, Brandon, you have leveraged this before and you mentioned it a little bit earlier, is the Magic Dash
Mhm.
and kind of how Hoodoo's Magic Dash works with the API and how you can leverage that. Obviously, we don't need to get into anything too official, but if you want to kind of go over just how the Magic Dash works, how you've leveraged it before, and obviously if you have any examples that you'd be willing to show off, but no worries if not today.
Yeah, I unfortunately don't have anything prepared that's anonymized enough of our
Yeah.
non-MSP client data to show off. But
Yep.
Magic Jacks are essentially interactive little asset insertions on the Hudu platform. So you're able to, through the API, post and get Magic Dash items with information like the company name, the title of the dashboard, and then the content itself within it. With that content, that can be essentially whatever you want it to be. I've seen a lot of people use it for integrations and different tools to put licensing information in there and then backlink to different management tools. Another one I've seen is on the front page of the client's page, you have links that go directly to the GDAP delegate access. So the slash tenant ID equals, and then it fills that information in so they can just pivot directly in there. It's API first from what I understand, and Jordan can chime in here and correct me if I'm wrong, but because you are able to have such rich integration with different tools, it's mainly focused API first to allow you to create it programmatically first and foremost.
Yeah, no, that's great. And we obviously have a couple of examples, and we've referenced the automation library a couple of times today. There are a few scripts, quite a few scripts that we've built out for the Magic Dash that are in the automation library, such as like asset article and password health are common ones that we see. Basically, keeping track of any stale passwords or articles or assets that are within your companies. Again, there's one thing to go through all of that documentation and see those last updated dates, but it's another to kind of have that automated, have a script running that allows you to um, really just get a report on, okay, what do we need to look at? And there's quite a few others in there too. So again, I'd recommend checking out the automation library for those. I do think we have one more question in the Q&A as
Mhm.
well.
Yeah, Chris here. Any tips on Hudo information and MCP for AI agent integration? Um, Does Hudo have a native MCP integration? I know you have Houdini, which links directly to specific models, but is there anything MCP related on the pipeline?
Uh, so I don't believe so. Jordan can maybe chime in on that in the chat if not. But yes, Houdini is currently compatible with OpenAI, Azure OpenAI, and Grok. We do plan to provide more AI providers in the future for that, but we used to have an OpenAI integration, and we kind of transitioned that into this tool Houdini, which can kind of function with more AI providers and do quite a bit more than that OpenAI integration was able to do.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of information here you can tweak, especially the prompt rules. This is really important for really any sort of AI integration, especially when you start getting into MCP stuff where you are extending it across multiple different platforms. The more scope your prompts can be, the better. You don't want it to just kind of make stuff up. One of the big drawbacks of AI right now is it doesn't know when to say it's wrong about something. And if you ask it to give you an answer, it's going to give you something. So the more guardrails you can put on it, the better. As far as our usage of MCP right now, it's something that the Rewst platform is adding soon. They just announced it at Flow. I haven't honestly put too much into it. We typically go just straight integration into Azure OpenAI for that, just because we have control over the data residency, where it's housed. When we're ingesting ticket information and customer data, we want to make sure that it's as tightly controlled as possible. So it is I definitely see the value of it. It is on the horizon as kind of the next big thing. And I see in the chat, Logan is also working on a Hudu MCP server as well. So maybe, I don't know if that's something that they can share out when it's done, but I know Logan does some pretty crazy things with gluing stuff together like that. But cool. Next one, we have another question here. Logan says he is awesome, up to share it. That's awesome. Do you use processes shared with customers or shared employee onboarding workflow of customers? If I'm understanding the question here, we do provide onboarding and offboarding forms directly to our customers, and that feeds back into Hudu as well for information. So we have our people assets. Another thing that is considered an asset, people think of computers and technology first, but people are assets too. Who is working for you? This is one of the big questions that sometimes even large companies, they can't even answer. So we do provide the on and offboarding forms directly to our customers so they can perform a self-offboarding. Certain HR platforms do also integrate with Rewst as well. Best source of truth for is if someone is employed is, are they getting paid at companies? And if they're getting paid, they're in their HR platform. Bamboo HR integrates beautifully. It's one of my favorite things to hear when someone has that. So yeah, once it runs through the onboard or offboard, it updates the information in ConnectWise, and then that gets posted back to Hudu as far as who they are, their job title, their contact information. And then once they are no longer a employee, they get offboarded through that form, then they are able to be marked as inactive and then archived in Hudu to clean up after itself. Are you using processes to keep customers up to date on status? As far as ticket statuses go, we do have some automations on the ConnectWise Manage side of things to run through that. So I may not be understanding the context. Feel free to drop in the chat too if I'm not reading that right. I'm only about 1/3 of the way through my coffee for the day, so bear with me on that. But we've got about 6 minutes left. And Daniel, I think you had some questions prepared too on your side to fill up the last few minutes here. And then I think we're good to wrap this webinar up.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And honestly, you've done a great job on asking most of those. A lot of them was, again, I know people, like I mentioned, are all over the place when it comes to what they're doing with the API and automation. I mean, I talk to customers every day, and some people are like yourself, developing out these crazy scripts that are doing everything automated for them, and some people don't even know that we have an API. So I think that kind of doing webinars like this where we can show what's possible, because obviously, like people have said in the chat, you're pretty advanced with this, and it's great to see from that perspective. But really just knowing that all of these things are possible are great. I would say that we've talked a lot about automation as a whole inside of Hudu, and obviously you've developed your Hudu instance to be as automated as possible. But is there anything outside of automation that you have leveraged in Hudu directly, that you think has been kind of a game changer for your company while you've been using Hudu? Or is your goal really to automate everything you do inside your documentation?
Yeah, outside of the getting information into the platform, getting information out of the platform to customers is super easy, and we love using it, especially during new onboards and handoffs. Whenever you have a password, whether it's a password resource or asset type by itself, or a password field on another asset that you make custom, you can generate sharing links based off of that. So rather than having to go through a password push instance, as long as all of your credentials you could possibly need to reference are centralized for the customer in Hudu, you can simply go to the record and say create sharing link and then send that to whomever you need to with an expiration date on it, just like a password push or password state instance would be. That's one that I know on our MSP side we use pretty heavily.
Yeah, definitely always great to keep the that customer kind of touch points as many as possible, right? With those process sharing links. And I think that may have been what Manuel was inferring earlier
Mm,
about kind of sharing out like whether it be onboarding processes or other processes, SOP
gotcha.
you're doing internally and sharing those out with your customers. Um, I think that's kind of what he was inferring to,
Mm,
which again I think is a great yeah, we use onboarding process sharing links in
mm.
our PSA customer portal to deliver full project progress visibility. Yeah, that's a good point, Logan. So a lot of the times a common workflow for people when they're kicking off that onboarding process is maybe that ticket comes into PSA and the first thing you do once you start that process, whether it be manually or whether it be kicking off based off a workflow from the API, is you send that share link to them so they whoever your customer is can kind of follow along with you as you're completing those steps, and again really just provides that additional touch point with your customers there.
Yeah, for sure. And the nice thing too is it's fully branded. I mean, you don't have to be a web
Yeah.
developer to make these things. All you need to do is know how to upload a PNG of your logo and your colors to Hudu, and then the platform just kind of takes care of the rest. I see one more question. I'm going to answer it really quick, and then we can kind of wrap up here. From
Yep.
Guillermo, any tips on enriching tickets with data from Hudu articles, password hints, assets? Yes. So the biggest challenge with pulling information out and putting it into a large language model like OpenAI, ChatGPT, is you want the information to not just be the entire knowledge base. So if you're developing an automation where it's supposed to go, okay, I have this context in the ticket, go ahead and look through Hudu for things that could be relevant, break it out into chunks, different types of assets, define, what is useful to pull out, whether that be passwords, computer information, if it's logged in there, information about the user, and then make separate queries. Say, hey, based on this, the contact on this ticket is XYZ name. Go ahead and search Hudu for the people record and give me the link to that. And then it'll say, okay, cool. Here's the initial ticket note. Go ahead and take in just the titles of all the articles in the central knowledge base and see if you can find any that come across that may match keyword wise or based on your own AI semantic search. Go ahead and put a link in that ticket. These are things where it's helpful to add context. It may not give you the direct answer. That's more of what we're trying to work out with that vector search thing. But it can be a little bit easier than having to tab into Hudu and then use the search bar if it can put that up automatically. But we are just at the end of time here. I want to say thanks to the Hudu team for inviting me out. I saw some chat in the chat. Some people might be a little bit overwhelmed with some of the things we've shown off here and then doing. That's really exactly what we try to do over at ZenTop to fix. There's a lot of people who see the value in it and they look at it and they're just like, I don't even know where to start. I don't have the internal resources. I don't have the time to implement it, but I want it. We're able to come in with a large library of pre-built premium crates that we can unpack into your environment, not only give to you to use, but also take over the monitoring, the maintenance, and support. So fully end-to-end managed automation services. All you need to do is have the platforms to use, and then we can come in and start getting that going for you.
Yeah, that's awesome, Brandon. Thanks so much. Just, you say thank you to us, we say it right back to you. Thanks so much for jumping on this webinar with us. And again, I think no matter where somebody is as a Hudu customer or not, everybody always wants to automate. It's just about how do I do it? Where do I start? What can I do? What's possible? And I think having you on here was, as Manuel said in the chat, inspirational, and we definitely appreciate you jumping on this, putting in some scripts into the automation library in the community. And yeah, we hope to do this again soon. Honestly, I love these webinars, and for our lucky winner, Craig, we will be reaching out shortly with some more information for you. Other than that, Brennan, I'll let you kind of sign off today.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for attending. As Logan said, I'm very pokeable in various community discords. I'm in MSP Geek. I'm in Tech Degenerates. I'm in the Rewst Discord. So feel free to reach out. I go by Giga a lot of times in platforms. So if you see that chat name, that's me. Drop me a line at Brandon@zentop.tech whenever. Even if you're not a customer, I'm always happy to chat about automation with people.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Brandon. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We're right at the hour mark here, so great timing on our part. And yeah, be in touch soon. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And thanks so much for joining today's webinar.
Cool.
Bye,
See y'all at the
everybody.
next one. Bye-bye.